Tallulah to me is every Southern girl that you always loved that walks barefoot down the lane. I'm sure you know a Tallulah, I do. And if you don't, you probably want to know one. And there's a freedom to her that when you get trapped in an image or in a job where you feel that you just can't go anywhere you want at any time you want, then you look over across the way at somebody who can. And of course you think that that's the life you want to lead. There's a need for this freedom, this need for getting out of this mundane existence, even though nobody thinks sometimes that they're not appreciative that they have a job or that they have a place to live. But this way of existing, maybe it's a child, Tallulah, but it's the magical side of self that sometimes we're so desperate to have in our own life. Hey Jupiter, as I told you, this record did come at a time where things were falling apart. So when I wrote it and then when we did the video, I remember in doing the video, there was, I guess, a need to play out in the art form the emotional story that had happened in order to even write the song in the first place. So doing the video, I think, was coming to terms with the real events that had occurred. How is that for a cryptic answer without telling you anything, but telling you so much? A lot of this record was written in the tropics, and I guess in my life personally, I had miscarried. So there was a point where I started to hear, strangely enough, all the souls that didn't make it to Earth, and for whatever reason. And they made up this choir. And there wasn't this sense of loss that I was feeling from my side of it. It was more of a reassurance that they would find the right mom for them when it was time, even though a part of you says, yeah, but, well, I'm happy for you, but I thought, well, wouldn't I have been a good one? So it takes a lot of bigger love than you have. You can't have a selfish love. If you really want that for a being, then you have to move them on. And you realize that maybe somebody else will receive this being inside them. But it wasn't for me at that time. So yes, in order to survive that loss, I began to see this magical musical expression of voices from the other side. Maybe it's my mother's spirituality. She's part Eastern Cherokee. And I had been guided by a medicine woman to lay down my body into the earth and to cry my tears to the earth, because she experiences death and loss every day in ways that I can't even imagine. Spark was about finding those wires that you have to connect in yourself. So you face things in your life, losses and disappointments, and you don't really understand them, and you look around and you don't want to be envious. You really, really don't. But then you see people having these great experiences and you think, well, there's got to be a reason that I'm going through this right now. And maybe it was the music, all the music that was coming at the time, that said, listen, when can you see that maybe you're not going to experience being a human mother, but look at all these songs. Can't you value that? And so in that moment, being able to really value that idea, I think that that record and the visuals for that record took on another dimension instead of just the loss side of it. My mom would talk to me about where she was the day that President Kennedy was shot. And I was 3 months old to the day, November 22nd. And she put me down on the ground when she heard the news. And she said in that moment, the world, the hope of the world was gone in that one moment. And to watch this young woman carry a country with her strength and her grief and her fortitude, my mother said, was how she got through her own grief. So it was in looking at Jackie's strength in dealing with such a circumstance that's so hard to define, especially if we go back to when it happened. Without the media we have today, we don't have the internet to communicate like we can with each other. So you can feel very isolated. And yet my mom said, from that moment on, she looked at Jackie in a completely different way. She wasn't just this glamorous woman that had a position in life that had been, well, you know, not a good position in life. She saw it as, wow, this is a human being that has survived something that maybe very few of us could have done, not in that way. Some of the women in my life have come up to me at different times and say, oh, why don't you just have a John Thomas? Why can't you just be a guy? And you know, I wonder that too sometimes, because I think I'd be a good guy. I think that I'd want to be a guy, though, knowing what I know, because I know how a woman thinks. And I think that if I were a guy, you guys would have so much competition, I would be stealing all your babes. Just would. And they know it. In 1999, as I was making this record, it just seemed to me that Earth needed a friend. And I would go out and look out in the sky and I could see Venus really well, strikingly well. Martian Studios is in the middle of nowhere. There are no street lights. There's a reason for this. We made it so that it's very difficult for the record company to get down. So the musicians they really have room to be away from the paranoia. And yet, when you go into Martian, into the control room, it's NASA. So you walk out of NASA, and there it is. You see Venus, clear as a bell, because of course there are no street lights, so you see everything. And it just seemed to me that she was saying to Earth, you have a ride to take. I thought Earth needed this kind of hand in a girl kind of way, not a competitive way, but a good way that girls can be. When we're being good and gracious with each other, it's magnificent. I think that bliss was really sarcasm at the human race. Maybe we're just a bliss of another kind. Maybe that the way we all deal with each other. Maybe if people are looking onto us from a different star system and they could see and talk to us what they see about us, I'd be fascinated to know how they see us. Because sometimes I don't understand why it's so difficult to communicate with people even speaking the same language. Sometimes it's so much easier to talk to people who don't speak English. Because I don't know, maybe the words get in the way.